My name is Lena Parker. I was 19, full of dreams, and ready to start a new chapter in my life. I had worked hard all through high school, late-night study sessions, extra credit projects, and weekends spent volunteering, because I wanted to go to Westbridge University. It wasn't just any school to me. It was where my late mom studied. Every time I saw her old college photo on the wall, she looked so proud and happy. I wanted that too. I wanted to follow in her footsteps and make her proud, even if she wasn't here to see it. But life at home wasn't as warm as that memory. My dad remarried when I was 16, and my stepmom, Carla, moved in with her son, Bryce. At first, she seemed kind, always smiling, always offering to help. But over time, I saw how she liked to control things. She'd go through my room under the excuse of cleaning. She'd make comments like, "You're just like your mother," but not in a kind way. Every time I mentioned my mom, she'd roll her eyes or change the subject. My dad never noticed, or maybe he didn't want to. When senior year came around, applying to Westbridge was everything to me. I remember spending nights working on my essays and collecting recommendation letters from my teachers. My dad was busy with work, so Carla offered to help me organize the paperwork. I didn't think much of it then. I thought she was trying to be supportive. She'd stand over my shoulder, smiling, saying things like, "Don't worry, sweetheart, I'll make sure everything's perfect." I believed her. Graduation day from high school came and went. My friends were talking about acceptance letters, campus visits, and dorm shopping. I kept waiting for my own letter to arrive. Every day, I'd run to the mailbox hoping for something from Westbridge. Nothing came. I thought maybe it was delayed, so I waited. Then one afternoon I checked online and my heart sank. My application status said incomplete. I remember sitting there staring at the screen, my hands shaking. I knew I had submitted everything. I double-checked every form before sending it. Something didn't add up. My counselor told me that some documents were missing, my transcripts and one of my recommendation letters. That's impossible, I thought. I had handed them to Carla myself to scan and email. That's when the uneasy feeling began. I went home and asked her casually if she had seen any email from Westbridge. She looked at me with that fake sweet smile and said, "Oh honey, maybe you just forgot to attach something. Mistakes happen." Her tone made me feel small, like I was just being careless. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. There was something in the way she looked at me, like she was pleased that I was disappointed. Like this was what she wanted all along. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one thought kept circling my mind. Carla didn't just make a mistake. She wanted to keep me from Westbridge. And I had no idea why. But I promised myself, right then, I'd find out. Days kept passing, and I tried to stay calm. My friends were getting their acceptance letters one after another. Every group chat was filled with celebration. Photos of envelopes, screenshots of emails, and excited plans for dorm life. I tried to be happy for them, but inside I was terrified. I checked my mailbox every day, even when I knew the mail had already been delivered. I refreshed my email hundreds of times. Still nothing. At first, I thought maybe Westbridge was just taking longer with decisions. But then one afternoon at school, my friend Naomi told me she'd gotten her letter from Westbridge 2 weeks ago. My stomach dropped. She applied after I did. Something wasn't right. That night, I decided to call the admissions office. I remember sitting at my desk, my heart racing as the phone rang. A woman picked up, and I gave her my name and application number. She typed for a while before saying, "I'm sorry, but your file is marked incomplete. We never received your recommendation letters or your official transcripts." I froze. That couldn't be true. I had handed those documents to my counselor, and she said she sent them. I had also emailed copies to confirm. I told the woman I was sure everything was submitted. She just apologized again and said, "Without those materials, we couldn't review your application." After the call, I sat there in silence. It felt like my whole future had just disappeared. I called my counselor the next morning, hoping it was just some kind of system mistake. She checked her records and said she sent everything weeks ago, and even received a confirmation email from my account. That's when things got strange. She forwarded me the email she had received. It had come from my address, but I didn't remember sending it. The wording was a little off too, something like, "I'll handle the rest myself. Thanks for your help." I knew I'd never written that. My stomach turned. Someone had been in my email. I rushed home that afternoon, locked myself in my room, and checked my email settings. Sure enough, I found something that made my heart stop. In the recent activities section, there were logins from the same IP address, our home Wi-Fi, during times I wasn't even home. And one of those dates was the day my counselor said I'd sent that weird email. My hands were shaking as I realized what it meant. Someone here had gone through my email. Someone who had my password. The only other person who used my computer regularly was Carla. She'd been helping me print forms a few weeks before all this happened. I had even watched her sit at my desk, logging into my email to check attachments. It hit me like a cold wave. She must have deleted my files and messages. Just enough to ruin my application, but not enough to get caught right away. I stared at the screen, numb. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My dream was gone, and the person who took it from me was living right down the hall, probably smiling, pretending she cared. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. The next morning, I waited until my dad left for work, and then went to find Carla. She was sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. My hands were trembling, but I asked her straight out, "Did you go through my email?" She looked up slowly, smiled, and said, "What are you talking about, sweetheart?" I told her everything. The missing documents, the email my counselor got, the logins from our Wi-Fi. She didn't even look surprised. Instead, she laughed softly and said, "Maybe you just made a mistake. College applications can be confusing." Her tone was calm, but her eyes told a different story. She wasn't denying it because she was innocent. She was doing it because she knew I had no proof that could stand against her. When my dad came home that evening, I told him everything. I explained how the emails were tampered with and how Carla had access to my account. He frowned, rubbed his forehead, and said, "Lena, you've been under a lot of stress. Let's not start blaming people without evidence." He looked at Carla, who immediately put on her sweetest, most hurt expression. "I was only trying to help her," she said softly. "I'd never do something like that." My dad sighed and hugged me like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Maybe it's time you take a break," he said. "You've worked hard. Maybe Westbridge just wasn't meant to be." Those words crushed me. He didn't believe me, not even a little. He believed her. After dinner, I went to my room and cried into my pillow. I wasn't just hurt about Westbridge anymore. I was hurt because my own dad chose to trust a woman who had only been in our lives for 3 years over me, his daughter. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I went to the kitchen to get some water and heard Carla's voice coming from the living room. She was on the phone, laughing quietly. I stopped by the doorway, hidden by the dark. "I told you she didn't even get in," she said, her voice full of satisfaction. Can you imagine? All that talk about following her mother's legacy. Not anymore. That school was supposed to be mine when I was her age. I didn't get in, and I'll be damned if she does. Her words hit me like a punch. My chest tightened, and my throat burned. She hadn't done it by accident. She'd done it because she couldn't stand seeing me succeed where she failed. She hated that I wanted something that once belonged to her dream. I stood there in the dark, gripping the edge of the wall until my fingers hurt. Every bit of hope and trust one had left disappeared. That night, something inside me changed. I stopped crying. I stopped hoping she'd care or that my dad would wake up and see the truth. From that moment, I promised myself that I would find another way. And when I did, she would regret ever trying to break me. I didn't want to beg or make a scene anymore. I signed up at the local community college and picked a full load of classes that would transfer to Westbridge. I chose the hard ones first, calculus, English, and a biology lab, because I wanted the credits to count. I knew the road would be slower, but it would be mine. Money was tight, so I took 2 part-time jobs right away. Mornings I stocked shelves at a small grocery store. Afternoons I worked behind the counter at a coffee shop. Nights were for homework and papers. I learned how to manage 30 hours of work, 15 hours of school, and still find time to study. Every shift I worked, I put a set amount into a small savings jar. I watched that jar grow like it was proof that I was chosen by my own effort. I kept the plan secret. I didn't tell my dad or Carla where I was applying. When they asked about my schedule, I gave simple answers. Busy, school, studying. Keeping it quiet kept me focused. I didn't want pity or interference. I wanted to build something real and private. At college, I met teachers who expected a lot. One of them, Professor Morales, pushed me harder than anyone had. She corrected my essays line by line and made me rewrite until my writing said exactly what I meant. Another instructor showed me how to ask for help instead of trying to do everything alone. I started going to office hours, taking notes, and asking for feedback. It felt good to earn improvements the hard way. I also joined a study group. We met twice a week in the library basement. Those nights became my strategy sessions. We quizzed each other, traded notes, and forced each other to explain complicated ideas out loud. Explaining things out loud made me understand them better. The study group gave me confidence, small wins that added up. Outside class, I applied for small scholarships and campus work study. I wrote personal statements for each application. Each essay made me think about why I wanted Westbridge and why I wouldn't stop until I got there. I saved every scholarship dollar and matched it with the money from my jobs. I refused to accept gifts or help that would tie me back into the home life I was trying to escape. My schedule was brutal some weeks. I learned to nap for 20 minutes between shifts, to cook in bulk on Sundays, and to protect my mornings for reading. I stopped making long plans with friends because my calendar was precious. I missed some social things, but each trade-off felt like an investment. Every hour I gave up on parties or lazy Saturdays went into my future. When transfer season came, I had all my transcripts in order. I had letters from 2 professors who wrote about how I worked and how I improved. I wrote new essays and revised them until the sentences felt right. I filled out the application alone, triple-checking every box. Keeping this plan quiet meant I carried my determination alone. That weight hardened into something useful. I learned discipline, patience, and pride in small progress. The quiet revenge wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about building a life that no one could take from me again. Carla's life didn't change much while I was quietly building mine. Every time I visited home, she found a way to talk about her son, Bryce. She'd go on and on about his football trophies, his leadership qualities, and how proud she was of him. The dining room walls were covered with his photos and ribbons. My name was never mentioned. If someone asked about me, she'd say, "Oh, Lena's just taking some classes at the community college," as if it were nothing. I learned to smile, nod, and keep my plans to myself. Most mornings started before sunrise. I'd open the cafe, grind coffee beans, and serve half-asleep customers on their way to work. My shoes were always sticky from spilled drinks, and the smell of coffee clung to my clothes. After my shift, I'd rush to class, sometimes still wearing my apron. By the afternoon, I'd be exhausted, but I didn't let myself slow down. I carried my notebooks everywhere, on the bus, in the break room, even to the laundromat. Every spare minute went into studying. I told myself that every tired morning and every skipped meal was another step closer to Westbridge. No one cheered for me or asked how I was doing, but that silence became my motivation. I wanted to prove that I could do what they thought I couldn't. During my second semester, I met Professor Jacobs. He taught English composition, and from the first week, he noticed how seriously I took the class. He'd write small notes in red ink on my essays, saying things like, "You write with conviction. Don't hide it." He became the first person in a long time who actually saw potential in me. After class one day, he called me over and asked what I wanted to do after finishing my credits. I told him I planned to transfer to Westbridge. He smiled and said, "Then we'll make sure your application tells your story the right way." That became our mission. He helped me shape my essays, not just as assignments, but as pieces of my life. I wrote about resilience, about losing my mother, and about how I refused to give up when life tried to knock me down. He pushed me to be honest, to write about the pain but also the growth. I spent nights rewriting drafts until they felt like the truth. Meanwhile, Carla kept pretending everything was fine. At one family dinner, she bragged that Bryce might get a scholarship for football. My dad beamed with pride. I sat there quietly, knowing that I had a 4.0 GPA, but no one at that table cared. Still, I didn't let it break me. If anything, it made me stronger. When I finally printed my final transfer essay, I held it like something sacred. Every word carried a piece of what I'd been through. The disappointment, the anger, the loneliness, but also the strength I'd built from it. I didn't need applause or approval. I just needed to send that application and let my work speak for itself. The day the envelope came, I almost didn't check the mail. It had been months since I submitted my transfer application, and I tried not to think about it too much. I'd convinced myself not to expect anything, just in case. When I opened the mailbox and saw the envelope with the Westbridge logo, my breath caught. It wasn't the thin kind that usually meant a rejection. It was thick, heavy. My hands started to shake before I even touched it. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at it for a full minute. I didn't want to ruin the moment by opening it too fast. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like I could hear it. Finally, I tore it open and unfolded the letter. The first word I saw was congratulations. For a second, I didn't believe it. I read the whole sentence twice. Congratulations. You've been accepted to Westbridge University for the fall semester. I couldn't stop crying. The tears came before I even realized what was happening. It wasn't just happiness. It was relief, pride, and exhaustion all at once. Every late night, every early morning, every ignored insult, it had all been worth it. I did it. Alone. I sat there for a long time, just holding the letter against my chest. For the first time in years, I felt peace. No one had helped me or handed me this chance. I had built it piece by piece, out of every disappointment and every ounce of quiet strength I had left. I didn't tell my dad or Carla. I didn't want her fake congratulations or his half-hearted pat on the back. This was mine, and I wanted to keep it safe. When they asked about my classes, I just said they were going fine. I started planning quietly, looking up dorm options, financial aid, and part-time jobs near campus. I even found a roommate through a student forum, a girl named Tessa, who was also transferring in. By summer, everything was ready. I packed my things in silence, mostly books, clothes, and a few keepsakes from my mom. The night before I left, I placed the Westbridge acceptance letter inside my notebook and locked my suitcase. When I told my dad I'd found housing closer to campus, he just nodded, thinking I meant my community college. Carla smiled like she didn't care. She didn't even ask where it was. That was fine by me. The morning I left, I loaded my small car and drove for hours. When I finally saw the Westbridge sign standing tall on the road ahead, my chest filled with something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. Moving into the dorms felt surreal. The campus was everything I'd imagined: the old buildings, the wide lawns, the smell of coffee, and new beginnings in the air. As I unpacked my things in that small room, I realized I had completely started over. No one there knew my story, and that was the best part. I was just another student, but to me it felt like reclaiming everything I'd lost. This wasn't just about getting into Westbridge. It was about finally being where I was always meant to be. 2 years passed faster than I expected. My life at Westbridge had become everything I once dreamed of. I worked hard every single day, not to prove anything to anyone, but because I loved being there. I studied late in the library, spent weekends in study groups, and took every opportunity that came my way. I made the dean's list every semester and earned a scholarship that covered most of my tuition. For the first time, I felt secure, like the world was finally giving me space to breathe. While my world was growing brighter, Carla's was quietly falling apart. I didn't hear much from home, but when I called my dad on his birthday, I could hear the strain in his voice. He said money was tight, and Bryce wasn't doing well in college. Apparently, Bryce had failed most of his sophomore classes and eventually dropped out. My dad was upset because he had spent so much on him: new car, expensive dorm, and endless second chances. Carla tried to act like everything was fine, but it was clear the perfect image she'd built was starting to crack. I didn't feel happy about their struggles, but there was a strange peace in knowing I didn't have to carry their chaos anymore. I had my own life now, and it was working. That spring, something unexpected happened. Westbridge announced their annual alumni gala, an event where top-performing students were invited to meet graduates, potential employers, and donors. It was a huge deal. Only a few students got invitations. I didn't think I'd be on that list, but one morning I opened my email, and there it was. Congratulations, Lena Parker. You have been selected to attend the Westbridge Alumni Gala as one of our top academic representatives. I just sat there smiling, remembering how this same school once felt out of reach. Now I was not only attending, but being honored. As I read more about the event, something clicked in my memory. Years ago, I had overheard Carla talking about this very gala. The same night, I caught her bragging that she'd stopped me from going to Westbridge. She had mentioned that her dream as a teenager was to attend Westbridge and go to that fancy gala with the alumni. She used to imagine walking under those chandeliers, dressed up, talking to important people. It was one of the reasons she hated my dream, because it reminded her of what she never got. Now, here I was, holding the same invitation she had once wanted. I couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and quiet satisfaction. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because life had a funny way of turning things around. I decided to invite my dad as my guest. I didn't tell him exactly where the gala was at first. I just said it was an event my school was hosting to recognize academic success. He sounded excited, and I could tell he missed spending time with me. I thought it would be a good chance for him to finally see what I had built for myself. That night, as I printed my invitation and hung my gown for the event, I felt calm. I didn't need revenge anymore. Life had already done that part for me. All I had to do now was show up, confident and unbothered, and let the truth speak for itself. The evening of the gala arrived, and I could barely keep still. I had been waiting for this moment, not for revenge, but for truth. I wore a simple blue dress and tied my hair back neatly. When I went to pick up my dad, he looked proud and surprised to see me all dressed up. He asked where we were going, and I just said, "Somewhere special." We drove for nearly an hour until we reached the grand hall at Westbridge. The building shimmered under the evening lights, tall glass windows glowing with gold reflections. My dad's eyes widened as he read the banner outside. Westbridge University Annual Alumni Gala. He turned to me, confused but smiling. "Wait, you go here?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Yes, Dad. I've been here for 2 years." He didn't say anything for a few seconds. I could see it in his face, shock, pride, and guilt all mixed together. Before he could respond, a familiar voice echoed from inside. "Carla." She was standing near the entrance, dressed to impress, her smile wide as she chatted with some guests. But the second she turned and saw me walking in with Dad, her smile vanished. Her mouth fell open as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Lena, what are you doing here?" she stuttered, eyes darting between me and our father. I smiled politely. "Oh, just receiving an academic honor. At your dream school." Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth to respond, but couldn't form a word. Around us, people began greeting me, professors, classmates, and even the dean. They congratulated me for my achievements, shaking my hand, praising my dedication. My dad stood beside me, listening to every word. I could feel him realizing how much I'd accomplished on my own. For years, he had believed Carla's version of everything. That I was lazy, ungrateful, and not good enough. But now, right in front of his eyes, he saw the truth. His quiet daughter standing among successful students, being honored for her hard work. Carla tried to laugh it off, pretending she was proud of me. "Oh, I didn't know you were at Westbridge." "How wonderful," she said in a shaky voice. But her eyes betrayed her. There was jealousy, shock, and fear. During the dinner, my dad barely spoke to her. He kept asking me questions instead, about my studies, my scholarship, and the internship I'd gotten. Every answer made his expression soften with pride. I could feel the distance growing between him and Carla, not because I wanted it, but because truth naturally drew its own line. At the end of the night, when my name was called to receive my award, the entire hall applauded. I looked into the crowd and saw my dad standing, clapping harder than anyone. Carla sat stiff, her fake smile frozen in place. That was the moment everything came full circle. I didn't need to explain, argue, or prove anything. The truth was right there, clear, undeniable, and shining brighter than any revenge I could have planned. As we left the hall, my dad turned to me and said softly, "I'm proud of you, Lena. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I just smiled. "It's okay, Dad. You see it now." And with that, I walked ahead, feeling lighter than ever. The girl they tried to silence had finally been heard, without raising her voice at all. After that night at the gala, everything slowly began to shift. The silence between my dad and Carla grew heavier with each passing day. It wasn't filled with yelling or arguments, just truth finally settling in. My dad had seen it with his own eyes. The pride in my professors' voices, the way I stood tall among the best students at Westbridge, and the look on Carla's face when she realized she couldn't control the story anymore. A few days later, my dad came to visit me at the university. He brought flowers and a small box of my favorite pastries from back home. We sat by the fountain near the library, and for the first time in years, he truly looked at me, not through Carla's words, but with his own eyes. "Lena," he said quietly, "I'm sorry. I should have listened. I should have trusted you." Hearing those words made something inside me loosen. I didn't cry. I just smiled and said, "It's okay, Dad. I understand now." Because I did. People believe what they see, and for years, he'd only seen the version of me Carla painted. But now that illusion was gone. Over the next few months, things at home began to unravel. Carla's fake kindness faded the moment my dad stopped taking her side. He started noticing the way she twisted every story, how she always made everything about herself or Bryce. And when he finally checked some of the family finances, he realized how much she had manipulated him. Money missing, lies piled up, and trust completely broken. One day, he called me again. "I've filed for divorce," he said simply. There was no bitterness in his voice, just relief. I didn't cheer or say, "I told you so." I just listened, because I didn't need to celebrate someone else's downfall. The truth had already done what it needed to. Meanwhile, my life was moving forward. My internship turned into a full-time offer after graduation. My professors recommended me for a research project, and I earned a scholarship for my master's. Every step felt like a quiet victory. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I had built everything with my own hands, away from lies and manipulation. Carla tried reaching out once, through a short message. Something like, "I hope you're happy now." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Her power had always come from my reaction, and by staying silent, I took that power away for good. Dad and I slowly rebuilt our bond. He came to my graduation, standing in the front row with tears in his eyes. When my name was called, he clapped like the proud father he had always wanted to be. That was my real revenge, not shouting, not proving her wrong with anger, but by living well, rising higher, and showing that I could succeed without destroying anyone. In the end, Carla lost everything she tried to take from me. My trust, my peace, and my place in the world. And I gained everything she never could: freedom, respect, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had won by simply choosing to rise. Graduation day arrived with bright skies and the sound of excitement everywhere. The Westbridge University courtyard was filled with proud families, laughter, and the rustle of graduation gowns. I stood among hundreds of students, but in that moment, I felt like I had finally stepped into the life I was meant to live. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted my cap, not out of fear, but disbelief. I had really made it. When my name was called, I walked across the stage with my head high. The applause felt distant at first, almost like a dream. Then I spotted him, my dad, standing in the audience, clapping, his eyes wet with tears he tried to hide behind a smile. He looked at me like he was seeing my mom in me again, and for the first time in years, it felt like I'd brought a piece of her back into both our lives. Carla wasn't there. Her absence spoke louder than any words she could have said. Maybe she couldn't bear to see the girl she tried to break standing tall in the very place she had once dreamed of. Maybe she thought her silence would sting. But it didn't. In fact, it was peaceful. I didn't need her approval or her apology anymore. After the ceremony, my dad hugged me tighter than he ever had before. "Your mom would be proud," he whispered. That was all I needed to hear. Every sleepless night, every tear I'd shed while working those double shifts, every moment I'd doubted myself, it all felt worth it. I didn't just earn a degree that day. I reclaimed my strength, my dignity, and my mother's legacy. Later that evening, while others celebrated loudly with parties and photos, I took a quiet walk around the campus. The sun was setting, casting gold across the old stone buildings. I thought about how, years ago, I'd cried because I believed my dream had been stolen from me. But now, standing there in my cap and gown, I realized nothing truly worth having can ever be taken by someone's cruelty. It can be delayed, yes, but not destroyed. Carla had spent years trying to make me feel small. But instead of breaking me, she built my strength without realizing it. Her betrayal became my fuel. Every obstacle she threw in my way became a reason to push harder. And now, here I was, graduated from her dream school, not as a bitter person seeking revenge, but as someone who had grown beyond her reach. That was the real victory. Revenge didn't come from humiliating her or proving her wrong to others. It came from standing in my own power, from knowing I had rebuilt my life piece by piece, honestly and bravely. As I walked off campus that evening, diploma in hand, I smiled to myself. Sometimes, revenge doesn't need shouting or anger. It just needs success. Because the best way to destroy someone who wanted you to fail is to live a life they'll never touch.